The cam and the equipment repair partners with bwparts.com. I showed you how to rebuild the mag. I showed you how to put it on number 4 where the rotor's facing number 4. The front of your Magneto has got a 1 where the 1 goes, so your firing order is 1, 3, 4, 2, and it's clockwise, not counterclockwise like what would be in a distributor. Okay, so that you understand how the timing is set up with the Magneto, it's basically set up with the cam and the main gear assembly. So when the main pulley gear and the cam gear are lined up dot to dot, and you flip this over, there's going to be a dot on the back side that's going to come through the window where you're going to be installing your Magneto. And basically, the governor has 2 marks on it. The cam gear has a single mark on it. So basically, when you set the governor in place, you're going to line up the marks off of the camshaft to the 2 dots that are on the governor. Now, if you notice that when that is in that position, that this arm is across from each other like this. When you have your Magneto on number 4, those marks are going to be, or those arms are going to be consistent to where they'll drop into each other. That's going to put you top dead center on number 4 on the compression stroke. So your timing you're going to do off of number 4, not number 1. Number 4 is the closest to the stator. Number 1 is the closest to the radiator. Okay, so when you're in that position, what you're going to see once you have your Magneto in place and anchored down is when you look in the window that is behind your oil bath, you'll see a window back there. It's got a little striker indicator in there. If it's an F-163 blackface or whatever, it'll have an hourglass looking piece in there, and that's the center of your hourglass is going to be where your timing marks need to be at. If it's a red face or whatever, it'll have a round window with a little strike indicator on the inside. And what you're going to be looking for is on the crank gear. There's going to be a DC mark that when all this is in position, that DC mark will be in that window. That's how you set your timing. So basically what you're going to do is with the Magneto straight up and down, it's going to be really, really close. But if you really want to dial it in really close, you bring your RPMs down on your carburetor as low as you can get it. By the book says 400 RPMs. Just get it to where it's just barely loping. Now, when you look through that window, you want to move the Magneto toward the engine or away from the engine until that mark is in the center of the dots on the crankshaft. So once that's in that position, you can go ahead and tighten your Magneto down, and then you can go ahead and bring your RPMs back up to factory specs. Now, the specs for a welder is, the way that it's set up is that the RPM speed at low idle has to be high enough so that it has enough voltage from the exciter armature, exciter brushes, the 2 brushes that are in the back, that it has enough current to, when you strike an arc, that it has enough current to the stator to kick it to high RPM. So if you're running your machine and you're checking your OCVs at low idle, you want to have your rheostat at 100, and you want to have at least between 30 and 34 volts. If when you go to strike an arc, it doesn't kick to high idle, bring your low RPMs up a little bit higher until when you strike an arc, it goes to high idle. Then you can set your low idle. A lot of people like to try to get better fuel economy, so they run the carburetor down as low as they can get it, and that's not actually how you're supposed to do it. There's actually specs, you know, for an SA-200 on how they're supposed to run, and that's part of it. So once you have the Magneto in position and you have the rotor facing toward the number 4 on the front of the cap, then the next thing you want to make sure you're doing is that DC mark lines up in the window. If it's not quite lined up, you can move the front pulley just a little bit until the DC lines up. It's really not that important. The main thing is you have to find it in the window. Usually what I like to do is I like to mark it with a paint marker so I know where it's at. So then when you start the engine, bring the RPMs down to about 400 RPMs, and then basically that's going to take the timing out of the Magneto, and you'll be able to see that DC mark will be close to that window. You're going to rotate your Magneto toward the engine or away from the engine until that DC lines up in the hourglass spot or in the striker of the round cylinder hole that's on the backside of the flywheel. So basically what you want to do is on the flywheel side, make sure that DC mark is in that window, and that'll get your time really, really close. and then you're going to bring your RPMs back up to wherever it's supposed to be at, so that the RPM is high enough so that the exciter voltage will transfer enough electricity to the stator to where when you strike an arc, it automatically goes to high idle. You can do that by bringing your rheostat over to 100 and looking at your OCVs. Your OCVs at low idle should be between 30 and 34, somewhere around there. You don't want to leave your RPMs really low to where when you strike an arc, it doesn't kick to high RPM. Now, if you don't have a timing light and you don't want to mess with doing that part of it, what you can do, and once you get this all set up, if you don't want to really mess with looking at that part, what you're going to do is it takes two guys. One guy is going to weld in third gear with like an 1/8 inch rod, and the other guy is going to move the magneto toward the engine or away from the engine until the sound of the pipe on your exhaust gets as quiet as possible. As soon as it's in that position, that means the intake and exhaust valves are completely closed when it's firing off the spark plug, and that'll dial you in pretty close. When you're done, you should be able to push your start button with the switch in the on position, and it should start usually with not using the choke. And that's it. All right, we're back. Right now on this engine we have the cam and the front gear lined up on the dots, so that the dot is in the window and the DC mark is also in this window right here on the flywheel. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to step to the other side, and I'm going to be installing the governor. I'll show you how to install the governor on the marks and how to install the magneto on the marks and how to put the gaskets in the correct spot on where they need to go and how they need to be put in so that they don't leak. Okay, we're back. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be lining up our mark, the two marks right here with the single mark that's on the cam gear. So what we're going to do is we're going to line this up. We're going to stab this governor in place. To hold the governor in place, really all you got to do is put the bottom bolt in place. Once the bottom bolt is in place, it's going to secure it into where it's not going to fall back out. Okay, once the governor is in place and secure, then it's time to stab the magneto. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the cover off so that when it exposes where the rotor is facing toward number 4. Make sure your gasket's in place. Make sure you position your mag correctly. Make sure that the rotor is facing toward number 4. And then you're going to put this gear assembly and line it up with the other assembly. Move it around until it bottoms out. If it's not bottomed out, it's not in position. Once it's in position, you're gonna be putting your top bolt in. Now make sure that you have a copper washer on it, that you have the block off plate so that you don't lose any of your oil coming out through that. Make sure that you have your gasket in place. If you don't have a copper gasket, you could also get another style gasket that is built into the washer that'll also work in its place. Once that's in position, make sure that you dope up all your bolts. Then you go ahead and secure your mag. Okay, we're back. We have the governor installed. We have the magneto installed. Make sure that you use RTV gasket on both sides of the governor seal and the magneto seal and the top gasket here. You don't have to block off this hole right here with a gasket and all that. It actually doesn't go all the way through. The bolt hole bottoms out on this side and on the other side. It doesn't go into the oil area, so you don't have to worry about that. I will step you guys into one other spot. If you're in the field, your magneto goes down and you don't have time to do all this, what you do is take your rotor cap off, take your magneto cap off, look to see the position that your rotor is facing in, okay? Mark it down on a piece of paper, whether or not it's 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever, write it down. Then you can go ahead and take the top bolt out and the bottom bolt out, pull the magneto off, put your kit in it, stick it back in, and point the rotor Make sure that you don't move the engine. Don't move the engine or the position of the engine once you pull the mag, because you want to be able to put the mag back on the exact same spot, and that rotor will be facing in the exact same spot also of wherever you took it off to begin with. So if you don't have time to go through all these steps and you're in the field and you're trying to make money, then just do it to where the rotor is facing the direction of where you pull it off at. So pull the cap off, look to see where your rotor's at, pull it off. That way you can go back to work and you can get it done without getting laid off or fired or whatnot. So put your cap back on, put your 2 bolts in place. Remember, number 1 is at 10 o'clock. Number 1, 3, 4, 2. If you're not really sure on the firing order, the firing order is stamped on the top of the head. So make sure you look at the top of the head and start with your number 1 and follow it around. And that's it. That's how you install a Magneto. All these parts that I've shown you how to install, they're all available through bwparts.com, including the water pump, the exhaust manifold assembly, the carburetor, all the Magneto parts, and also we sell the governor as part of an exchange program. So all these parts are available through our website. Make sure that you get the right parts to do the job correctly.